1, 2, 3. Welcome to the Rap Report with your host, Andrew Rappaport, where we provide biblical interpretation and application. This is a ministry of striving for eternity in the Christian podcast community. For more content or to request a speaker for your church, go to strivingforeternity.org.
All right, welcome to the Rap Report. I am your host, Andrew Rappaport, along with my trusty sidekick, Bud the Wiser.
Greetings. Thank you for that.
Hey, your Bud sign is off. Usually,
I can fix that.
Yeah, usually when we record here, there we go. There's Bud in bright lights. Now I feel better. The world is normal again.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. We'll get to that in a moment. What we're going to talk about today, folks, is kind of what we started with 2 weeks ago. We did a thing on the national strategy of dealing with counterterrorism. Very, very unfortunately scary episode. It was a long one. I think Bud said I was obviously too ramped up, too much knowledge on the subject. And so I went off for 2 hours and Bud barely said a word. So we're going to try to rectify that this episode. We made Bud do a lot of research this one so he could have lots to say. But this is really a continuation of that. And what we're going to deal with today is dealing with examples and things from Facebook, Twitter, elsewhere, where you're seeing social media and what they define as how they're trying to take care and protect people. Really, we would call that censorship. We're going to show that today in this episode. But I want that to be seen, want you to realize this is going on. One of the reasons that we're going to do this, and we're going to get to the show, we're going to try to get the point across to each one of us is the world is against us, folks. Just wake up to that fact. It's time to be woke in like a real way. Like, truthfully, woke means being born again. That's really what it should mean. You're dead in your sins and then you're born again. That's woke. Right. Like you woke up from deadness. But we'll talk about woke and things like that. But the thing though that you see is that in this idea of trying to protect people, social media is not really protecting, they're censoring. They're no different than communist China. And so a lot of people then are going, well, we got to fight this. We got to fight this. Well, okay, you can, but Christian, realize the biggest thing for us is not to try to fight the culture. It's to try to convert the culture. And obviously we don't do the converting, God does. But guess what? God, what does he say in Romans 10? He says he's not going to spray the gospel in the air. That's not what he's planning to do. He could have people just Bibles and people read the Bible, but the reality is he wants a preacher. How are they going to hear? How are they going to believe unless they hear? And how are they going to hear if someone doesn't preach? Well, we got to be preaching the gospel so that they hear the gospel and so that they would get saved. That's where we got to focus. So really, although we're going to talk a lot about issues in culture today, we're going to talk a lot about social media. What I really want you to focus in on is the fact that, Christian, our focus needs to be on the gospel. Our focus needs to be on recognizing what we need to do in a culture that is very much against us. Okay. So that's going to be the overarching thing that we hope you'll get across to get across. Now, I will mention last week I had the privilege of being on Voice of Reason Radio. I encourage you to go listen to that one. We talked about a tweet that was out by Joya Micah. She has obviously blocked me on all social media now. It was really kind of funny, Bud, because I told her she was going to block me on Facebook and she was like, no, I won't. And I just kept looking. Because I said it, she didn't block me right away. She waited 3 months, but she did block me like when I hadn't been saying anything about it. So it says like she just remembered like I think her pride. She was like, well, I'm not going to let him be proven right. Because I said, folks, watch, she will be blocking me because I criticized her. And so she waited several months, but then got back to it. Right.
Yeah.
But we dealt with a tweet she said about that we should be Christ-like and not biblical. And Chris and I went through, what does that mean? Like, look at the definitions. And so it was a privilege to be on there. If you listen to Voice of Reason Radio that just dropped it dropped last night. As I'm not on Twitter. We could talk about that today. Why? Right. I've been kind of shadow banned from Twitter and that became a useless platform for me. But yeah, I mean, I think the rumor that I heard, Voice of Reason Radio, their episode was on Owen Strand's book, Christianity and Wokeness. And the way I understand it is on Twitter, I guess Chris Hunholz is giving away 3 signed copies. That's how I think I heard that on his podcast. I could be wrong, folks, but go listen to his podcast, see if I heard that correctly. If it's on Twitter, it must be true, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
You've been doing a bunch of articles, Bud, on the SBC. A ton of them on different topics. You've dealt with what went on with the convention. You dealt with some things with a number of things with Ed Litton and the plagiarism. You've dealt with things about, which I think is the great article on, the SBC got the wrong black man, right? Because if Ed Litton resigns, then you have Lee, who's black, but he's not woke. He's not a critical racism theory kind of guy. And so he's the wrong kind of black man. Like you make in the article, a great point, like, okay, well, hey, getting rid of Litton would be an appeal to both groups. Not only do you replace a white guy with a black guy, but you get to say that you got rid of the white guy to appeal to the conservatives because he was plagiarizing.
Yeah.
And yet they're not doing that. Wonder why.
There's a word for it.
Yeah.
There's a word. It's called hypocrisy.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Well, you also deal with some of the hypocrisy in an article on Al Mohler. So you have that. You also have a great article for folks who are in the SBC on leaving the SBC. And so that's another article. And I will admit the funnier article is one you did, Babylon Bee style, on Lifeway selling sermons. But, an interesting thing this week, though, with all that SBC stuff, we've talked with the world is watching. They said that, my whole argument is their problem is they're focused on the world is watching, and that's why they want to push critical race theory. My argument is God is watching, and that's why the plagiarist guy should step down. Yeah. John Harris on his podcast had talked about the fact that in the Southern Seminary, they specifically say that this service that J.D. Greer had a testimony on, he removed it. He asked them to remove his testimony, of course, but he used their service and said how that service, I forget what it is that Justin Peters had mentioned,
Docent group.
Dosser group. And so docent group. And so they made J.D. Greer look good, and it is kind of interesting how many people have 143 sermons in Romans, just interesting, as if they all were maybe using that same group. How many of them have the same titles? I mean, that's something for people to start doing, is looking at all of these big name preachers, especially going through the Dosset group, and look at who has recommended them, and then go through all their sermon lists online and go, oh, let's figure out, how many people have the exact same title, names of their sermon titles and number of sermons, and start looking there. And I bet you're going to find that, you're going to see a lot of people that have identical sermons. So the other thing I found interesting is I do some stuff still with IT, and I help out one of a major, Fortune 500 company. Every year they put on a software symposium where you get people coming in to talk about software and the advances within software. Very interesting, because one of the things I do in leading that symposium is I work with teams, about like 50 people who are going to be reviewing all the papers that come in. And this week I got an email from someone saying, hey, here's a paper. And I happen to notice that it's basically right from this website and that website. Yeah. And so what did we do? Well, we're canning that article or that paper. That abstract is being rejected. Why? Plagiarism. So for the SBC that says the world is watching, in a secular capacity, I would not allow plagiarism. Why in the world would I accept it in a capacity in the church?
Oh, you're just being a Pharisee.
Thank you. Oh, that wasn't a good thing. Oh,
no,
I thought being Jewish that was a compliment. I'm sorry.
I was on the other side of the argument for a moment.
Okay. So, Bud, we're starting a little bit late today, I know, and that's throwing you off a bit. I'm sorry. I kind of didn't. I called you and said we need to start a little late. I don't remember. I can't even remember the reason. Why did we have to start late?
You overslept.
Oh, that's right. Now, why did you find that interesting? Why did you find that strange?
Overslept because I know you sleep like 45 minutes a night or something.
Usually 3 hours, and it's only because my wife made me promise that I'd sleep every night. But I've been sleep. I mean, look, you don't understand. I've been running about a half marathon a day. Okay, so that helps with getting a little bit more sleep. So I got up to like 4 to 5 hours of sleep I've been doing lately. But yesterday I did try something. I got into a sauna. And so after a run and then a lift, I got into a sauna, and it was late in the evening. And so I actually slept 6 straight hours. I haven't done that in years. But maybe it's also because I have like the world's best mattress topper. I mean, I'm just saying, I got the MyPillow pillow, the MyPillow mattress topper. I think that's it. Now, I will say, the MyPillow is running a massive overstock sale right now, and I am thinking of getting their MyPillow weighted blanket. That's 50% off right now. So I am thinking about that. But I can only get the 50% off with a promo code. So, do you happen to know a promo code I could use, bud?
SFE, I think.
That would be a good one to use, because that would not only get me a weighted blanket, and save 50%, but support Striving for Eternity and this program. So that's a good idea. I might have to do that. But that is something I am looking at getting, because I do like weighted blankets. But it's on sale. But the mattress topper I got, I don't know if it's still on sale. They had the 2-inch mattress topper on sale for 50% off with a promo code. I have the 3-inch, which I absolutely love. If you've been listening to this show, you know that I have been enjoying my sleep a lot more. I will admit that I don't know if it was the running that has gotten me sleeping more, to 4 to 5 hours, or if it's that mattress topper, but they do seem to coincide. I'm just saying, actually, the more I think about it, no, the running did start earlier, because I've been running for a while, just not that much. But yeah, I guess it's the mattress topper getting me sleeping more. All right. So, folks, we are supported.
You're not woke, literally.
Yeah, I'm not fully awake yet. But this show is supported by MyPillow. We appreciate when you guys go out there, go to mypillow.com, and you can order there and use promo code SFE, or call 1-800-873-0176. That's 800-873-0176. And I would strongly suggest getting the mattress topper, and the MyPillow pillow. I'm looking forward to this winter. I plan on having the slippers and the robe that they have. So I'm looking forward to that. So with that, we should talk about, before we get into our show, because this kind of coordinates with the show. We should talk about the funniest post I've seen on Facebook this week.
Yes.
Okay. So my friend Darren Stid, first off, I did like having fun. He was on Apologetics Live with me, so I kept calling him Darren Stud just to see his reaction. He liked that. But here's his post. I told you about this morning, but this was hysterical. I saw this week. Funny. This gets an award for funniest post of the week. It's creative, makes you laugh. You can also do this on your own Facebook. Try this. It works well. I you know what? I think I'm going to steal it. I'm going to do this right now. And I wonder if I share it, whether this works. Let me share it with friends and see if that'll work as well. But I've just shared it on my Facebook, so you will see if it works. Bud can go out to my Facebook and see if it works the same. But here's what Darren said. This post right here is about to be the dumbest, most inaccurate, most irrational thing you've ever seen on my Facebook wall. To find out more, click the link below. Oh, also, COVID vaccine. What happens when you post that? Well, you get a link that Facebook immediately puts up that says, visit the COVID-19 vaccine Center for Vaccine Resources. Get vaccine information. That is hysterical. That was brilliant that he did that. All you have to do is say COVID vaccine, and Facebook will automatically, magically put that link in there. Now, how long did that take? Well, as we saw, I mean, I could take a snapshot of this. It says just now, I just shared it, folks, just saying that. And I read to you what it said on my wall with the COVID vaccine link. That's how quick it is. So what we want to talk about is the fact that this is the thing you end up seeing with Facebook and Twitter. They're doing these algorithms to search through everything that you have, and they're taking action on things that you do. In fact, Bud, you just shared with me, Owen Strand. We mentioned the podcast that Voice of Reason had done on his book, Christianity and Wokeness. It seems that they're doing the same thing they did with Vodi Bakkum's book, Fault Lines.
Yeah.
People are posting a link to his book, and now all of a sudden it says this content is unavailable. Facebook is removing Christianity and Wokeness and Fault Lines. Now, what's with these two books? Well, these two books happen to be two books that are against the view of being woke, of this critical racism theory. And so Facebook and Twitter and the like are going out of their way to make sure you don't find anything they don't want you to see. Okay. And this is organized. Now, folks, I want you to recognize something. We're going to go through what we had said we were going to do some weeks ago. We're going to do today is go through their community standards on Facebook, Twitter, to show what their rules are for things so that you understand. And, this goes along. If you have not listened to the episode we did, and you should have, by the way, the episode we did 2 weeks ago. If not, you really should go back to that one, only because the reason I'm saying that you should go back to that is because the one we did on the National Strategy for Counterterrorism against Christians, we did that because, that shows you what their target is. They're looking to target Christians or people that they choose to target. They're coming up with, they're saying they are domestic terrorists. Real quick synopsis. We went through basically what the Biden administration has revealed as their plan to deal with domestic terrorists. And they explain who they think domestic terrorists are. Violent domestic terrorists. And you say, well, fine, that's not me. Well, they're going to say they want to get them before they're violent. So they're going to do profiling. What are they going to profile? If you want to protect your privacy from them spying on you, you are in that category. If you think there might have been fraud in the 2020 election, you're in that category. It's amazing because they've said fraud in every time a Republican wins, the Democrats and media claim that there was fraud. But this election, somehow that makes you a terrorist. Saying that Trump was working with Russia in 2016 is not terrorism, but saying that there was fraud by Americans in 2020 is terrorism. You go figure that difference out. But do you not believe everything that the Biden administration is saying about COVID-19? You're a terrorist. Do you think that there's an overreach of the government? You're a terrorist. All those things are put you in the category. And what that document said is that the government will work with private sectors. What private sectors? Well, social media. This is why we're saying part of what gets you identified as a terrorist in their eyes is moving off of the platforms that the liberal government is working with. This started under Obama. Remember, folks, this is the thing that Obama said. He wants to fundamentally change America. You all thought he was talking about socialism. He was talking Marxism, but how is he going to get it? This is how he got it, to get the major companies to push his agenda, to be working with the major social media platforms to influence the news, to censor the news. And that's what we are now talking about today. This is part of a lot of times on this show, we'll talk about biblical interpretations for things. We also talk about giving you an understanding of our culture from a biblical perspective. So what we want to do here is, like we did 2 weeks ago, we're going to go through a lot of things that are going to be going through what is actually going on. And then at the end, we want to give you encouragement. So, but we have to lay a lot of groundwork first. This is stuff that you're not seeing. Yes, you've known these things exist. You hear people talk about it. What we want to do is actually give you, well, evidence. Okay, that's what we're going to do here. So, but before we get started, anything that you want to start us off with? Because I said you're going to do a little bit more talking this time. I'm not going to. You're definitely talking. You're definitely going to be talking for sure when we get into talking about Section 230. But
Section 230. Yeah. No, I think it's important to understand. We've all, as participants in Facebook, we've tacitly agreed to these policies, and we're at the mercy of these policies so far as we're on that platform and on Twitter and other social media that would be in the same vein. And that's important. It ties directly to this whole Biden move about handling domestic terrorism that we did that show on, which folks really do need to go back and listen to that, and then drill down into this episode where we're talking about particularly social media, and then particularly how it affects Christians. And you'll ultimately see where is the real target going, because we can't, as Christians, we can't forget there is an enemy behind this narrative. There's an enemy that is against our Lord, against the gospel, against our faith, that is driving all this narrative. And it's being done by people with debased minds and evil intent.
Correct. So let me start. I want to start with, this Facebook's community standards. Okay. So this is, I'm going to read some things from their violence and incitement. Okay. So let me read the paragraph of their rationale for this policy. We aim to prevent potential offline harm that may be related to content on Facebook. So I'm going to stop there. Where's the harm actually occurring there?
Offline.
Oh, okay.
Offline.
So right off the bat, Facebook is saying they're going to monitor what you're going to do when you're not on Facebook. Okay. So they're basically with this saying, if you notice, they're saying, indirectly, they have to do this because they feel that they are indirectly responsible for what happens off their platform by the content on their platform. Okay. Which is a very interesting admission. Why? Because, Facebook wants to say that, they wanted to blame, if you remember January 6th, you remember that day of infamy, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the day that the Pelosi worked with the FBI and Capitol Police to allow people to come in and act like tourists in the Capitol building, take selfies and walk around and be invited in and be given the, free to reign to walk around and take pictures. And that was horrible. It was horrible. In fact, do you know how many people have been charged with insurrection? 500 people have been arrested, over 500. You know how many have been charged with insurrection? Not one. Not a single one. In fact, they're being held. Here's what my theory is with this. They're being held in solitary confinement for all this time, since January 6th. Many of them are in solitary confinement. There haven't been charges against them yet for many of them. And those that have had charges are things like trespassing. I don't know how they're trespassing. Like they were invited in, but we already have one guilty plea. Okay. The first one, they haven't had any cases, none have gone to trial that I know of, but one that was plea bargained. Why? Because a grandmother wants to see her family. She said that the police waved her in, but what did she have to do? To get out of jail, she had to plead guilty and read a whole bunch of books about what a racist she is. And before the judge, admit that she is evolving on the issue of racism, and she apologizes for her white supremacy. Why does that become important? Because what they want is a narrative. They want to say, see, all these Trump supporters that were protesting that day, they're a bunch of white supremacists. because they can't actually find evidence that they're white supremacists. So what are they going to do? They're violating the law because they're not giving them due process. They're supposed to have a very quick trial, pre-trial, to see if there's enough information for a trial and be given bail. And there has to be justification if they're kept in jail without bail. These guys haven't even had that bail hearing. And so the due process is being denied them. Why are they in solitary confinement? That's for the worst, because this is all about an agenda to push. They want to get these people so willing they'll do anything to get out of jail. They'll plead guilty to anything. Mm. Okay. And so far as I know, only 2 cases have gone forward. Sorry about that. So what we end up seeing is, because that really isn't the main point of what we're discussing, but I got off tangent.
Wait, was that a rabbit trail? It was a rap.
A rap trail. Okay, so we aim to prevent potential offline harm that may be related to content on Facebook. While we understand that people commonly express disdain or disagreement by threatening or calling for violence in non-serious ways, we remove language that incites or facilitates serious violence. We remove content, disable accounts, or work with law enforcement that we believe there is a genuine risk of harm or direct threats to public safety. We also try to consider the language and context in order to distinguish casual statements from content that constitutes a credible threat to public or public safety. In determining whether a threat is credible, we may also consider additional information like a person's public visibility and the risks to their physical safety. In some cases, we aspire to conditional threats directed at terrorists or other violent actors. In other words, saying terrorists deserve to be killed, as an example they give. And we deem those non-credible, absent specific evidence to be contrary. Okay, so let me break some of these down, and I'm not going to be able to go through all my show notes that I gave to you, bud. I just know that up front. But notice it. They're going to remove language. They're saying they have the ability to remove language that they believe. So here's the thing. Facebook, whether you know it or not, when you first signed up for Facebook, you signed up to give away the fact that this is public information. I don't know if you recognize that. When Facebook started, what they did was have you sign that everything you put on there is public information. That's what allowed them to sell your photos and make the money off it. Yes, they resell your photos that you took or images of you. You don't get the money. They get the money because you, knowingly or not, accepted their rules, their agreement that says it's public information. Why did they do that? They originally did that because they said they didn't want to, this is supposed to be free speech. They wanted everything to fit under free speech, which is public domain. They wanted it to be able to be where if the government has to come after some information for law enforcement purposes, they didn't want to make them have to get court orders. Therefore, if it's in public domain, they can just hand it over. Very interesting because they pick and choose what they want to hand over. We've had plenty of cases where you see a killer that they clean up their Facebook page after the person dies. Facebook does it, not the person who committed the crimes, but it's like they cleaned up these, you see these black kids who commit murder, and all of a sudden it's like, it's all cleaned up. Because when they get killed by a white cop, all of a sudden, all the pictures with them with guns and threatening to kill people, kill cops, all that's gone. Facebook removed it after the guy died. Amazing. Was that to prevent other harm? You see, they've set themselves up in public domain, but they're setting themselves up as they're the arbiter of the censorship, and they get to decide what needs to be censored. But then they want their cake and eat it too. We're going to get to that with Section 230. We're going to make sure we get to that, because what they're doing is saying, hey, we're protected by this. Section 230, if you don't know what it is, Bud's going to go through this, but that protects them from the government coming in and censoring them. but they're acting as, well, the Chinese government. they're acting on behalf of, like the Chinese government, to censor. And they're acting on behalf of who? Well, let's be clear. Joe Biden, the Biden administration, the spokesman for the Biden administration said this, quote, "In terms of actions we have taken, or we're working to take, I should say, from the federal government, we've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation," unquote. So they have agreed, they've acknowledged that they are working with Facebook and other organizations, which, if you listened 2 weeks ago, we said that's what they said they're going to be their strategy of dealing with terrorists, domestic terrorists. They're going to work with private companies. They're going to work with social media companies to be able to do the spying that the government cannot do. Folks, this is unconstitutional. Okay? It is unconstitutional. Why? Because Facebook right now is acting as government. They are censoring speech, public speech, which fits under the First Amendment. It is free speech. You have the right to say it. And they'll say that, hey, they're protected by Section 230 under free speech, that they don't censor. But yet here they're being, they will censor. Well, but let's take a look at some posts that have been censored. I sent some of these to you. Just some examples of this that fit under this, because when you click on their link, this is where you get sent to. Okay, so here's one from I'm not going to give last names, but Justin. We've reviewed your comment and found it goes against our community standards on hate speech. Mm-hmm. And when you click on it, you get to the article that I read. So what did he say? What was the thing that was so bad? Here's what he read. Here's what he wrote. He wrote to answering someone's question in my Christian Apologetics Facebook group. He was answering the question to someone, what does respecter of persons mean? That's a theological term. And so he gave an answer. A respecter of persons, meaning no one earned God's favor for salvation. All men are desperately wicked. God calls who he wills without respect of persons. Read Romans 9. Read the whole chapter so you don't miss anything. Great read. That sounded pretty violent, didn't it?
Hate speech.
That is hate speech. What in there could possibly be hate speech? Calling all men desperately wicked.
Desperately wicked.
Where did he get that from, folks? The Bible. That is from Scripture. That is hate speech in there. So Danny in our group, one of the admins that I have helped me moderate that group, he says, "Dear ones, we have just received a Facebook strike, or warning as it were, that what was it for, you ask? For this line right here, quote, because all men are desperately wicked, unquote. Seriously, that's it. Facebook, quote, suggested, unquote, that I remove the person/member that made it. Under absolutely no circumstance will I do that. I'd rather die a martyr's death than cower to the powers to be. So, dear ones, please press on. Keep fighting for the standing on biblical solid doctrine and accurate theology, because in the end, that's what we have that's worth fighting for." That one got removed for hate speech. So what did I do? Well, see, I understand how the technology works. So where Danny typed that all out, I took what Danny said and took a picture of it and put that into the group and made it an announcement. Why? Because it's easy to search. We have computers that can search text very quickly, very easily. That's what, when you do big data, it's basically dealing with all of this text and being able to search it really, really rapidly. That's how Google searches all these websites. So when you type something in, and we're going to give a reason why you shouldn't be using Google anymore. You should use DuckDuckGo. I will give evidence for that in a few minutes. So I took it, made this into a picture, because that they can't scan the same way. And so that's still up there. That'll be removed probably eventually when the Facebook Nazis, when the Facebook SS decide they're going to find it. But here's another one that I found from Wesley. Now, Wesley's got this thing. Wesley, we received your comment and found it goes against our community standards on harassment and bullying. What did he say? You ready, Bud, for harassment and bullying? Here we go.
I'm looking at it. Wow.
Here we go. Here's what he said. He responded to someone and said, if that's what you want to believe, Bud, you're obviously a literal brick wall. Ooh, that is so harassing. I mean, this is nothing like what you want to challenge folks, go into the leftist Facebook groups, go into the pro-Biden groups. You want to see what harassment and bullying looks like? You want to see what hate speech looks like? Go in there and read it. I joined some of those groups just to see the vitriol and hatred. They're still bashing Trump, wishing he would die. We're going to get to that in a moment. That's not allowed. But they could do that all the time when it's Trump. Saying that someone now, but I don't think he was talking to you, just for the record, when he said,
yeah, no, that's one of
you want to believe, Bud. It wasn't, he was talking to a guy named Rick. So it wasn't you, just so people recognize that. I mean, you're Bud the wiser, not just Bud. So,
but brick wall used to be, like a compliment. High school football, I was called the brick wall when I played high school football. And that was like a badge of honor. In fact, I have a literal badge.
Is that
is brick wall?
Isn't that like what's
wow?
Andrew Jackson was, he was the Stonewall.
Stonewall, yeah.
I mean, but you're obviously a literal brick wall. I mean, in the context, I'm guessing, like thinking about it, he's saying the guy just isn't thinking through things.
Well, it's got little laughter emojis and head slapping and,
Yeah, I'm not great with the emoji stuff. I don't read emoji well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't even know how to put them on there, but nevertheless, obviously they're reading a tone in here that I can't read.
Yeah, I mean, but how does this fit the definition? I mean, is this like some, it's amazing because they're going to, even by their own definition, they're going to protect terrorist groups, okay, from people that are against terrorism. Like, you can't say a terrorist deserves to die. And yet you go into these other groups and you'll see they could say Trump should die. They could bash him all day long, even though he's not even president anymore. But hey, so let's look at, let me continue with what they say for the violence here. Let me read some things that fit under how do they define violence? Well, let me quote from their Facebook standards. Quote, threats that continue to lead to death and other forms of high severity violence, targeting people or places where threat is defined as any of the following: statements of intent to commit high severity violence. This includes content where a symbol represents a target and or includes a visual of an adornment or a method, armament or a method to represent violence, calls for high severity violence, including content where no target is specified, but a symbol represents the target and or includes a visual of the armament or method that represents violence. Statements advocating for high severity violence,
aspirational or conditional statements to commit high severity violence.
I'm just, wow. But Bud, I'm
how do they determine this?
Let me go back to those Facebook posts that were removed. I'm confused. All men are desperately wicked. I'm trying to figure out. Wait, I'm trying, Bud. I'm trying to see how that fits under this definition here. They were targeting people. Well, all men. Who are they targeting? I guess they're targeting every single human being. Is that it? It's saying all men are dead. But what's the high severity violence in there? I'm not quite sure if I get that. Calling someone a literal brick wall. I don't know. I'm having a hard time with this, Bud. I really am.
You think their algorithm is picking up when something is maybe Christian?
Maybe. Maybe, you can post white fragility, but you can't post Christianity and wokeness, or, Bodhi Bachum's fault lines.
Got to be conspiracy. We're just engaged in
We must be
conspiracy here.
But there's got to be reasons. There's got to be more. I mean, they probably tell us what we can and can't post, right? I mean, that would be a fair thing to do on Facebook.
Yeah.
I will admit, Facebook gave us more information than Twitter. That's why we're focusing on the Facebook one, because they actually tell you what you can and cannot post. So what you should not post, do not post. That's literally what it says, do not post. So what should we post? Quote, content that puts LGBTQI plus, I needed my pillow, people at risk. I mean, why don't they just add the whole alphabet? I mean, Google isn't Google's the parent company called Alphabet now, right? So why don't we just call it Alphabet? Content that puts, LGBTQI plus people at risk. So if you put them at risk, how do you define risk? Well, they do define it. If you say that they practice homosexuality, okay. What if you out a Christian? What if you say someone's a Christian? Can you, people never get canceled just because of their Christian views, do they, bud?
Wait, flip over to the other page with your.
You read it.
We'll get to that because I got a couple of quotes for you on this.
You're reading ahead, huh? Page 3. Okay.
Oh, no.
You want to give your quotes now?
No. Go ahead. Keep on. Keep on.
So the first one is if you put them at risk. Who else? And I found this one interesting. You and I had to talk about this one. Here's another person that put content that puts unveiled women at risk by revealing their images without a veil against their will or without their permission.
Now, who would that be?
That would be Muslims. Now, here's the irony, folks. This is where, when you read this stuff, and I know you've never read through the community rules, the community standards that they have for Facebook or Twitter or these other groups, you usually get that thing that asks you to agree, and you just click, yes, I accept. I accept your terms without reading them. Silly you, silly me, silly all of us, because this is what we're agreeing to. Yeah. But it's fun when you read it, because when you read it, you realize, oh, wait, they're saying that in the Muslim culture, if a male finds out that there's a picture of a female, how's he going to know? Who's going to know that it's her when if you put up a picture, say some woman's in the gym working out, and you take a picture because you know she wears a veil when she leaves the gym, and you post that would be wrong. Who's going to know what she looks like? Well, the only people that could know what she looks like under that veil is her family in Islam. So what is it saying? That if there's a picture of her without her veil in public, that she could be in harm from who? Oh, her Muslim family.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you that they think about Islam? That they think it's violent. And yet who do they protect? Muslim.
Yeah. I was about to
right?
say,
So
that's the irony.
Yeah, they're protecting Islam. You would get in trouble for posting the picture of the woman because they know that Islam would harm her if they're going to practice the Islam properly. You guys, is anyone smelling that? Yeah, that's the smell of hypocrisy. That's that smell that you smell there. Violent threats against law enforcement officers. Wait. That can't be possible. But did I just read that?
Violent threats. That. Yeah.
Violent threats against law enforcement officers. What about the Antifa and Black Lives Matter posts for a year now targeting law enforcement officers? Where did they learn in every city to use the green lasers, the lasers into the police officers' eyes to blind them? Facebook. Yeah, that's right, folks. And some of those posts are still up there a year later.
Mm-hmm.
Where did they get the idea of burning police cars with police in them and police buildings? By the way, folks, in case you didn't realize, that's called violence. I mean, just for those on Facebook that may not recognize, over $2 billion, that's a B, $2 billion of insurable damage. That means Those people that were insured, there's a whole lot of people that don't have insurance. They got damaged. That's not counted in that 2 billion plus. Okay. So when you look at this, violent threats against people accused of a crime. Interesting. What about the Dems' false claims of Trump committing crimes? I mean, they threatened all kinds of violence against him. AOC does it all the time. She's still on Facebook. But 10,000 people had their Facebook and Twitter accounts removed because either involvement with January 6th protest, or they're friends with them or know them or have interaction with them. That was enough to get you blocked because you're violent. January 6th, by the way, folks, not a single gun was found. Not one. Zero, nada, none. One person was killed by a Capitol police officer whose name is being protected. You never find that when a white man kills a black person, but here's a white man killing a white girl, and there's nothing on it, right? I mean, she should at least have one intersectionality point up, but nope, she was a Trump supporter. And was there a threat to the officer? I mean, if you haven't seen that video of her being shot, you should go find it. Oh, what am I saying? That's been removed. Okay, go to Rumble. It's still out there. Okay. The reality is when you look at that, she wasn't even in the building. She wasn't even in the building. He shot her through a window. And there was a whole swarm of police right behind her. What in the world was that about? They needed they needed someone killed to have some violence. That was all staged, folks. I'm just telling you that one area, they wanted people to be breaking in. They wanted the video of people breaking in the building. They had the police right there. They had the media right there. The police were on side. The police had it all barricaded with chairs. Look at that barricade. Anybody who's been in any kind of law enforcement or military that knows how to barricade a door knows that door was not barricaded with chairs that could easily be pushed aside. Okay. There was nothing heavy barricading that door. A bunch of chairs just stacked on. Some looked like they were almost wicker chairs, easily pushed over. Okay. It was all for show. I'm sorry. Now, I know that makes me a domestic terrorist under Biden's administration.
Well, you're back into the conspiracy theories. My goodness.
Simple logic, critical thinking. I know I'm cursed with that, having to think for myself. And so what you end up seeing with it is that was all staged. Okay. If you listen to this podcast, I've gone through that in the past. It was all a staged thing. It was all for Pelosi to make a big cry. And now she's going to have a Democrat only committee. Oh, wait, there's one Republican on there. The one Republican that's going to lead the committee, but she's really a Democrat. The Republican Party should just remove her from their own party. That's what they should do. But, the thing is, though, is that they're just using this to take total control. This is everything. And so, you end up seeing that they say that the threats against elected officials. Really? That's violence, folks. If you make threats against elected officials, I could be wrong, but wasn't Trump president when they actually removed his account while he was still president? Huh?
Yeah.
And the left has been able to make all kinds of claims against him all the time. All right. So what does it come down to? We're going to skip a bunch of this, but their focus on some of this is what they say. They have three tiers. Tier 1 focuses on entities that engage in serious offline harms. Folks, how do they know what you do offline? Very simple. They're working with the government. Go back to the episode 2 weeks ago with the national strategy on countering terrorism that's against Christians. They're targeting us. They're watching what we do. In fact, now would be a good time for me to bring up this article, Bud, that I had sent you. But here's an interesting thing. There is a semi-secret internet surveillance group. It is called the Internet Covert Operations Program. Now, is this part of the FBI? No. CIA? No. And folks, so you understand the difference. FBI does investigations and things, law enforcement in the U.S., CIA is foreign. How about Department of Homeland Security? I mean, that sounds like it could be Internet Covert Operations Program. That could fit in. No, it's not them either. Who runs this covert program? The U.S. Postal Service. That's right. The U.S. Postal Service has hired thousands of people to be able to spy on you. They go through Facebook, Twitter, Parler, Telegram, all of these things so that they can build these profiles to know how you behave offline. Interesting. They're building all that. Now you say, why would it be the USPS? Why the United States Postal Service? And I'll have in the show notes an article to this. Here's a little thing of why I think that it had to be under that organization. Because that organization, the U.S. Postal Service, you may not realize this, is the only government organization that is both private and public sector. Okay. And so because of the way they're designed, they actually became semi-private. I think it was under Clinton, because they basically were losing money. So because of government laws, this was then done in such a way that they could do things as a private entity. Now it's kind of interesting because the first year they went semi-private. What ended up happening? Well, they lost. I forget how many it was. Like they lost. I forget the exact number, but we'll just use number 500,000. And they had given 600,000 in bonuses to all their executives because now they could give bonuses as a semi-private company. I found that very interesting. But the issue here is they can fit under both public and private laws. That gets them around certain things. And I think that's why the government is using that organization to be able to do this. But they're openly spying. What do they see as a threat? Okay, well, groups that offline do serious harm, okay, that repeatedly dehumanize people. You know, I haven't seen Hamas thrown off of Facebook yet. We kind of know they do a lot of harm to people, shooting rockets into Israel. Every time there's an election, Palestinian election where there's the different groups, Hamas seems to do this regularly. They just shoot rockets in, not a problem. No, dehumanizing. Hey, obviously, Bud, there is nothing on Facebook promoting abortion, is there?
Oh.
No? Yeah, I didn't think so because that dehumanizes people, doesn't it? It says that they're not people. And I always love how when they put these things at the end here, it says, we also will remove content that praises, substantively supports, or represents ideologies that promote hate, such as Nazism and white supremacy. There's the catch-all, white supremacy, the catch-all phrase. But I think you had some things on white supremacy that, we were talking about, but I'll give you a chance to bring that up. But the thing I put in my notes here for this was I noticed that there's no praise for the false arrests in January 6th. None of them have been removed. That's praising. Oh, why? That's right. They call them white supremacy. I do see lots of praise of BLM. That's still up there a year later. That's black supremacy. What exactly is the difference between black supremacy and white supremacy?
Narrative.
We're going to be against racism.
No, narrative, which we've discussed.
Narrative.
No, what I was going to tell you is from Vody, which we mentioned earlier, fault lines, and it's not merely the issue of white supremacy, but notice what the category is, and you just mentioned white supremacy as the summary there, but the overriding thing is Christianity, and here's what Vody said. I'll send you the link so you can put the link to the sermon in the show notes, but. This is quoting, he's defining what critical theory is, critical race theory. So we understand from the Marxist foundation of that originally being an economic critical theory between oppressors and oppressed, proletariat and bourgeois. But here's what Vody said, and this is quoting. So, quote, the oppressor class, and he's defining this, the oppressor class is unjust, white, male, but also heterosexual, cisgendered, able-bodied, native-born, but ultimately Christian. Christianity is the hegemonic, oppressive power in America according to critical theory. Now, all these things we're reading here, where is this directed? Where is this going? Well, it's certainly bringing in all of these different categories that they define as unjust. It's targeting white. You just mentioned white supremacy. Male, of course, patriarchy is a big deal. We've seen heterosexual is not, a protected class. That's an oppressor class. Cisgendered, so you've got the transgender issue, able-bodied, native-born, but ultimately it's Christian. So this is what we're dealing with here, and this is what these guidelines, these policies and procedures ultimately do lead to. You've already given examples of that, and ultimately will lead to in a much more severe and dramatic way, I think.
Yeah, because they're going to later in that document, they define hateful ideologies as Nazism, white supremacy, white nationalism, white separatism. Well, let's look at that. Nazism. Well, Nazism doesn't actually exist. Like you don't have like the Nazi party doesn't exist in Germany anymore, right? Oh, but they'd say the ideals of what are those ideals? It's interesting because they don't address what those ideals are. But what do they always bucket it with? Well, white supremacy. White supremacy. What is it? They think white supremacy is Christian. That's how you see this in the media. White nationalism. What's that? Conservative or Republican, right? That's what they're referring to. Everything January 6th. That was white nationalism. I love the fact that there were a ton of blacks and Hispanics, and or what they would say black and brown people. Those were white nationalists. Huh. But there's no mention of black supremacy, black nationalism, black separatism. Interesting. So they use this term so that you're supposed to say, well, I'm against white supremacy. Yeah, but they define that as Christianity. I'm against white nationalism. I don't want just whites running the country, but they define that as conservative. Okay. Now it's interesting because in their tier 3, they say tier 3 focuses on entities that may repeatedly engage in violations of our hate speech or dangerous organizations' policies on or off the platform. Well, I'm going to stop there. On or off. Folks, how do they know the off-platform stuff? They're working with the government and other groups to build a whole profile on you of your life. Remember, profiling is wrong. Police are not supposed to profile. Law enforcement shouldn't profile when you're black. But profiling you, Christian, we could do that all day long because white supremacy bad, black supremacy good. That's racism. When you start saying any group should be supreme, that's racism. What makes white supremacy wrong? Racism. Therefore, black supremacy is wrong. Racism. We are being consistent. They are not. They're practicing. What's that word? It starts with an H. I can't remember.
Hypocrisy.
Oh, that's right. Hypocrisy. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. So let me continue. So they're going to look at on or off platform or demonstrate, and this is crazy, demonstrate strong intent to engage in offline violence in the near future, but have not necessarily engaged in violence to date. So Facebook thinks that you will, in the future, you might be violent, and they have the right to decide. Notice, they're the ones making this decision. They are going to decide that you will be violent in the near future. They don't need evidence of it. They just need to, they don't have to justify themselves, folks. They have the ability to censor you. They don't have to prove anything that they say on your freedom of speech. Remember, this is open to the public. This is under free speech, but they have the right to censor your free speech. This is the Constitution guides this conversation now that it's public domain. Yet they say, oh, it's our algorithms do this. We're protected by our algorithms. We're a private company. If what we say on Facebook is public domain, then they may be the platform that allows for the discussion, but they should not have any right to limit or censor that discussion and to censor it based on what they think you're going to do in the future and that you haven't necessarily engaged in. They just think you might. That suddenly is bad.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, it says that, if you demonstrate strong intent, how do they determine this?
Well, we already know
They
that.
determine it on the basis of these categories that they've just identified and the ones that
as
we've discussed.
But see, now that Biden administration gave them the categories.
Right, exactly.
If you want to protect yourself from Facebook spying on you, if you think there was fraud in the election, if you don't believe that, everything they're saying about COVID, by the way, everything they're saying today about COVID, they said was conspiracy before about COVID. So go figure. If you have a question about where the origin of COVID came from, well, they won't declassify that. The Democrats won't allow that to be declassified so that we could know, did it originate from the Wuhan virus that was paid for with government money for research by none other than Anthony Fauci. So Facebook says they're an example they give is you can't say things like we donate to the KKK. That will be removed. You see any removing of things that say we donate to BLM? In fact, all the companies are praising that online. What's the difference between white supremacy and black supremacy? So there's some other stuff. We had stuff with Twitter, you could as well, but it's amazing that we see, that like on Twitter. I want to give at least one example for Twitter. They say they're going to remove stuff that expresses a desire for death, bodily harm, or serious disease on an individual. Really? Can we go back to the leftists that said we're thanking God that Trump got COVID? We hope he dies from it. Yeah. Those tweets are still up there today, folks. The left can do that. That's not a problem to them. They don't think that's violent or extreme. So what you see here is what's their standard. Now I want to give some examples. You wanted me to do this. So let me look at my other screen here. But some examples, you wanted me to explain some stuff going on with Google. All right. And so I'm going to give some actual evidence of what's going on. By the way, before we get to that, we should mention our second sponsor is Logos Bible Software. But you got to enjoy the webinar we did last week.
I did.
Did you enjoy that?
I did enjoy that. That was very informative.
Okay, good. I was going to actually ask you, was that informative? So that's good. It must have been without me having asked.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy Logos Bible Software. They usually don't give discounts, things like that. The discount they offered with that is gone, but there's still a way that you can get a discount, or at least some free books. I'm Jewish. I love free. What can I say? If it's free, it's for me. So the thing that we're given is if you want to upgrade to Logos, maybe you have Logos 7 or 8 or maybe even older, and you want to get Logos 9, what we could do is, or if you don't have Logos at all and you want to start, we have a shorter link for you. It's bit.ly/SFE Logos, Logos. It's in the show notes as well. Just go there, click on that link. If you get it, not only do you get the discount they offer, which I think is 15%, but you also get 5 books from Striving for Eternity. You can choose between those books. If you're anything like me, I always go for the most expensive ones that I'm going to get for free. That's me. If I can't decide between, I go for more expensive that I'm getting free. Why are you shaking your head?
I'm sorry, I had to cough.
Sure you did. Okay. So one of the things I've mentioned this on the episode 2 weeks ago, Matt Slick and I did an example just to show, and you can do this as well. The example we did is go on every search engine and type in, what is the Trinity? And if you go to DuckDuckGo, carm.org is going to show up in 1, 2, or 3 position. Yahoo, 1, 2, or 3 position. Any of them that are out there, any search engines are going to give you Carm. We did like a half dozen to a dozen search engines, and all of them had Carm in position 1, 2, or 3. We did it on Google. What did we find? We found that Carm was on page 3. What was before him? Wikipedia.com, Wikipedia.Denmark, Wikipedia.UK, Wikipedia.Australia. There were 3 pages of Wikipedia in different countries, and then Carm. Oh, useless links. Oh, wait, no, there was one on, that's right, I forgot. There was one on page 1 from an atheist site. So they are purposely downgrading. So I want to give some examples. So I'm going to go back to last. Well, what did we say? We said we wanted to start before the election. So I'll start in September. So these are some facts from our website, from Striving for Eternity, and just so you get some numbers. So back last September, we had 4,700 people that came to the website just from Google. Now, this isn't including Facebook or anything else. And then we had next month 3,200. The following month was 2,800. Following month was 2,600. The following month, I got to actually click on it. That helps. The following month, 2,600. These are just from Google. Okay. 2,500 the following month. Then we have 2,400. Then we have Google with 2,100. Then we have Google with 2,000, 1,500. Then we have them Google at 1,500. This is now September. This is this last September. So I went a year ago September, so you get that whole year. So now we're in last September. Now by last September, you saw it going down. You could say, well, hey, maybe people weren't finding stuff on Google. That could be, but we want to show you how quickly it dropped. Last September, 1,400. November, during the election, we were 1,700. Then we go to December, and we're at 1,900. In January, we're at 2,100. February, 2,000. March, 2,300. In April, 3,400. Okay, this is when we started to notice the change. Now you've seen all the numbers. By the way, DuckDuckGo had it, before like the election didn't even show up. Now that was started showing up. Okay, yeah. And so here, May. We see in May, Google 2,400. June, let me get June up. June is 2,000. And all of a sudden in July, 800. Sorry, I was wrong on June. June, I looked at the wrong one. Sorry. I ended up looking at the full list of all of them when I said 2,000. So Google was 900 and then 800. So what you end up with is looking at this. You can see that all of a sudden in the last 2 months, sudden drop. Interesting. This seems to coordinate with Biden's putting out that thing about domestic terrorism. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Google is purposely downgrading Christian sites. Okay. We were 800 in July, right? And so you see from where in the thousands, suddenly it would drop. And the reason we wanted to go through all those months is to show you that this was a quick drop. Okay. From June being, from May to July, we go from the thousands to the hundreds just on Google. Now, DuckDuckGo, I find very interesting. That just keeps rising up and up and up and up. It didn't even register before, now we're getting hundreds of DuckDuckGo. That's the search engine, by the way, that I use now, folks, is DuckDuckGo.
Me too.
Yeah.
Because you told me to.
I'm such a dictator. So folks, we could show mathematically just with our site. And if I asked Matt Slick at Carm to give his numbers, I'm sure he could show the same. We've given you ways you could show this on your own. Go do a search on what is the gospel. Well, you could do that. I haven't tried that one. Maybe we'll try that one. What's the God? But what is the Trinity? And you're going to see what happens. In fact, Bud, now I'm kind of curious. Let's do this one. What is the gospel? And DuckDuckGo, the first one up is Bible.org. Got questions. Gospel Coalition. How would they know what the gospel is? Ligonier. Those are, I mean, those are some pretty good sources, right? For if I wanted to find out, you know, if I was looking for stuff. So let's see, what does Google have? What is the gospel? Oh, it helps if I'm in the right place. What is the gospel? What does Google have? Google's number one. Well, that's an advertisement. I get past their, let's see, advertise. So they're number one. Okay, so they do have got questions. That's good. In the page one is got questions. So that's interesting. But I noticed that there's a Wikipedia, info.gonow.org. Don't know who that is.
No.
Plan O Bible Chapel.
Plano.
Plan O Bible Chapel.
Plano, Texas, probably.
Oh, okay, that could be. All right. You know, that's interesting to have that up there. You know, if I keep scrolling down, I eventually find the Bible Coalition and 9 Marks, and there's Ligonier. Amazon. Okay. So that one's not so bad. That's not nearly as bad as what is the Trinity. But do a search on what is the Trinity, and you can see how it's way out of whack on that. So, you know, this is something that you could do. So let us switch over to section 230. Now, this is something, but you've done a lot of the research on this one. I know we're going a little bit longer, just like we did on the last one, because we want to give you all this information. But I said, wait till the end. We have an important message coming at the end of the show. But you know, we do, because a lot of this, you say, well, where's the Christian view on this? That's coming, but we needed to lay a lot of groundwork at first. So what's the issue with section 230? Why is this having their cake and eating it too?
The you know, the section 230, which if you go there's a really helpful link that you'll provide on here from Heritage Foundation. It is very thorough with regards to section 230. And what this is a part of is the Communications Decency Act. And this is attempting to oversee the protection of social media, largely is where it applies, to provide them some legal protections and also some legal empowerment to screen what was originally for obscene material in certain jurisdictions. If there was illegal content that shouldn't be displayed and they deleted that, it would prevent them from being frivolously sued for removing content. So that's what section 230 speaks to. Particularly, there is a category, it's section 230, paragraph C, which is known as the Good Samaritan paragraph. And what it says is protection for Good Samaritan blocking and screening of offensive material. It says under the treatment of the publisher or the speaker that no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. You skip on down and you get to number 2 under that paragraph, which says no provider shall be held liable on account of any action voluntarily taken in good faith to restrict access to or availability of material that the provider or user considers to be obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable, whether or not such material is constitutionally protected. And I'm trying to flip over to this very helpful
and you're saying flip because what people can't see is, unlike me,
actually have paper.
You actually print everything out. You have it on paper with highlights.
My highlighter doesn't work on my iPad.
Sure it does. Just, I mean, it wipes off. That's the only problem.
Yeah, well,
Bud had an actual paper. He actually prints everything out. So when we say old school, he's really old school. I didn't say he's old. I said he's old school. I don't want to get the emails from you folks saying that you called Bud old. Have you seen it lately?
That's okay.
Come on, he's got a lot more white in his beard than me.
That's true. But I've had that since I was in my 30s. So,
well,
all right. So here's what Heritage says. Let me read this. Come on, I want to cover this. Heritage in the article, which is called "Mend It, Don't End It." Speaking of Section 230, it says Section 230 is clearly intended to incentivize internet companies and websites to proactively remove objectionable content by providing them with a liability shield from continuous and presumably frivolous lawsuits from aggrieved users. The statute's vague language and subsequently broad judicial interpretations have, however, led to a situation where some internet companies are overly insulated from accountability and are reasonably suspected of not meeting Section 230's good faith standard. So, in other words, they've got such excessive legal protection that they can effectively get away with doing whatever they want to do with regards to censorship. This is social media spycraft, all these algorithms that are affecting, what you post. Every time you say the word COVID and you get the links, they are not only participating with the domestic surveillance that Biden certainly is promoting and wants for the protection against domestic terrorism, but they're also targeting specific categories that you can't go back against them. They've got freedom from liability. This Section 230 shield under the Good Samaritan by saying, well, we were acting in good faith. We were trying to protect people.
Yeah. This is what I say, having your cake and eating it too. What they want to be able to do with this is to say that they're protected. The government can't stop them, but they are allowed to censor. So they've set themselves up as the arbiters of what content is dangerous and the ones to remove the data. So it's kind of like the inmates are running the asylum.
Oh yeah, it's definitely that.
Yeah. And so this Section 230, it became a big deal when Trump was president, where he wanted to get this. He wanted there to be awareness to this because there is issues with this. Okay. There's issues when it comes to the fact that here you have the government stepping in and you're really doing what they don't have the legal right to do. Okay. But because they're doing it with the business goes, well, hey, government can't come after us. They can't charge us because, we're just a business. And then at the same time, they want to be able to say, well, they're kind of protected because, well, we're not, we're a private company. And so, but yet they also say, well, yeah, but guess what? Everything is public domain. Well, if it's public domain, it is protected under free speech. That's the reality. Okay. Yeah. So is it free speech or is it not? Is it public domain or is it not? These are the things we need to figure out.
One of the little things that astounded me that comes from the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, which is pro Section 230. I mean, this supports their industry. It gives them these certain rights and freedoms. But they've got a thing. I'll send you a link on it. They say perhaps most famously, Section 230 shields social media platforms from liability for their users' posts. And as its writers intended, it allows them to engage in good faith content moderation. With how active internet users are on social media, it's nearly impossible for these platforms to remove every potentially unlawful or offensive post. And here's what's astounding. For example, every 60 seconds, Facebook's billions of users post an average of 510,000 comments, 292,000 status updates, and 136,000 photos. Facebook has 15,000 content reviewers. These are not algorithms. These are people viewing your posts. Facebook has 15,000 content reviewers working around the world to remove posts that violate the website's community standards yet some still manage to slip through the cracks. And then it mentions YouTube, that their stats as of 2018, every minute there were over 500 hours of new video content uploaded. And they have, what's it say, over 10,000 people reviewing that content. There is massive oversight here on your speech.
And so you say at this point, it's like, okay, Andrew, Bud, you guys have been talking about this for over an hour. What is the Christian response? How should the Christian view this? How should the Christian respond to this? And so all this was to lay out to here, because basically the Christian response should be one thing. Well, first is the fact that we got to recognize the world we live in. This world is not in favor of us. They're not looking to, they are not looking to work with Christians. Okay. They are clearly have an agenda that they're pushing. And what we end up seeing is that there's many Christians who want to try to fit in with the world, live a comfortable Christianity. This has been a drive for decades now within Christians to just try to have a big church, go to church, leave your Christianity at church. Don't bring it into the workplace. Don't bring it into the culture. Just say quietly and the world will leave you alone. That was the thinking. You know, there are a bunch of Christians that just picked up and they vacated. They left the culture, left the schools and started their own. And now there's been a push for generations now of Christians. Keep your kids in homeschooled, or keep them in Christian school. Keep them away from the evils of the society, protect them. And then they grow up and it's like, well, you know, all their friends, oh, we should just hang out with the Christians, keep all our Christianity at church. At work, we could be completely different. Oh, we don't go like do everything that everyone else does. But we'll keep our Christianity at home. That doesn't work, folks. The reality is that the culture, if you remember, Bud, we're old enough to remember this, when those that practice homosexuality in the 80s used to say, you know, we shouldn't talk about what they do behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. What they do in the bedroom, they should be allowed to do. They should be, you know, leave us alone in our own bedroom was some of the arguments that were made. And what was the thing that people said back then? That's fine if you'll leave it there, but you won't. But you won't. You'll push it into culture. They did. You'll push it into the schools. They did. You'll force it into the churches. They are. And what's the next step? You'll silence the Christians because of it, and that's what their goal is. So what you end up seeing, folks, is that, you know, we did the thing last week where we talked about They're Coming for Your Children, that homosexual group that made a song about it in San Francisco. They're really clear in it. They could say it's satire, but they know it's true. They're coming for the children. That's why in kindergartens, they have drag queen day. They have drag queen teachers. Why? To make it acceptable. The world is not comfortable with you keeping your Christianity within your church. That's not enough for them. They want it eliminated. They want you off Facebook. They want you off Twitter. They just don't want you going to sound like, you know, Parler or Gab or you know, any of the others. Because if you go to the others, they can't spy on you for the government. They can't censor you. They lose that control. That's why, I mean, look what happened with Parler. I mean, they just took Parler down. Yeah. Why? Because Parler supposedly was where everybody coordinated January 6th. No, it wasn't. It was Facebook and Twitter. Facebook had far more, was the number one place where people were talking about going down January 6th. And yet Facebook was not taken offline. Neither was Twitter. But that was supposedly the reason that they took down Parler, or Parlay would probably be the way I pronounce it. Why? Because they want to be able to censor you. And if you go somewhere else, they don't have that ability to do that. So what do? They're going to work to get Parlay offline until Parlay agrees to being sent to act as censors. Okay. The only one that's standing up that I could see is really Gab. I mean, Gab, he's just like, okay, well, we're going to create our own way of doing things because we're just not going to be turned off. And so I just wish more Christians were on there because everything on Gab is like political. So I am on there. I'm starting to get more active on there. But the reality is, folks, what we end up seeing as Christians is we have to recognize the key is the gospel. The gospel, the gospel, the gospel. You hear this from us over and over and over again. We do not try to change society. Let God do his job. He will do that if he so desires. And this is a hard thing. I was discipling some people last night and we were talking about this. The reality is, and this is hard for Americans, I understand, it may not be God's will for you to live comfortably. You may live like the rest of Christians under persecution. How could you say that, Andrew? Because I don't know God's will, and neither do you. And you having wishful thinking is not God's will. The question that we have when we pray, we are to pray, your will be done, right? What does that mean? That we want to pray according to God's will. What God wants on earth, that's what we should want. We need to be seeking what is his will. Right now, it looks like his will is judgment. Because this rampant homosexuality is not going to bring God's judgment. It is God's judgment. Read Romans 1. We have to recognize the times in which we live. Stop trying to live in the past. Live in today. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, those of you listening, you have the greatest opportunity to share the gospel unlike any time before. Right now, everybody who had any kind of indifference, gone. Every single person, it seems right now, is afraid. They're afraid of something. They're either afraid of COVID virus or they're afraid of socialism, but everyone's afraid. We have the answer.
Yeah.
The gospel is the answer. Is Facebook censoring us? Yes. Are they spying on us? Yes. Is Twitter doing the same? Yes. Are they doing it in working with a government, a regime that is trying to make this a one-party system that is trying to take over the country so that they could bring in their Marxist ideologies? Yes. Is that God's will? It sure looks like it. Why? Because it's happening. Now move on. I mean, it's like, folks, look, we're not going to sit here and change it by complaining about it. We bring all this stuff up so you're aware of it, so you know what's going on. And the reason we bring it up is not so you sit on your couch and go, whoa, what was me? I can't take it. Not so you get out to the next political rally and start fighting there, but to get you out of your seat and get you onto the street corner where you are and make a difference with the gospel. That's what we need to do. Look, the reality is the world is not changed by what you don't do. We have a whole bunch of leftists that think that their whole purpose in life is to make an impact on the world. They got to change the world. And their way of change is not always good, folks. Barack Obama could say hope and change. He's hoping for change. The question is, what is the change? Is it for good? No, it wasn't. And so change can be bad. And people go, no, it can't get worse. Oh, it can get much worse. And I think it will. But if we don't start sharing the gospel now, I love what Rich Story says from Voice of Reason Radio. If you're not willing to share the gospel when it's legal, when the world makes you think you're going to share the gospel when it's illegal? And that time is coming. The time that Christianity will be illegal is coming. And so I want you to think about that. I want you to realize that now is the time for us to share the gospel. Okay. With that, let me tell you something. If you live anywhere in the Philadelphia area, we're planning an outreach in Philadelphia on the 30th of this month. Okay, the Friday the 30th, July 30th, 2021. So if you're listening to this later, then you should not be binging old episodes. Well, you could, but listen live. Like for those of you who are months behind, and you don't get these, like, that's why you're missing these things. I'm going to start letting you know of different events so that you could be in the know, but you got to start listening when we drop it, which I will announce we're changing our drop date. This is going to be the last episode that will drop on Sunday. I'm going to start changing it to dropping midweek, probably Tuesday or Wednesday. Different reasons for that, but it's just going to be a little bit easier time-wise, scheduling with all of the other podcasts that we have in the Christian podcast community. We have like 40 podcasts there. Everyone seems to want to drop on Sunday or Monday. So we want to kind of spread it out through the week. So I have, since I'm the executive director, I lead by example. I'm going to move my podcast. And so this will move to probably a Tuesday or Thursday that we're going to switch to. So next week, next Sunday, don't go, hey, something happened. Let me know what your thoughts are with that. If you like that idea, don't like that idea, please email me. Go email at info@strivingforeternity.org, info@strivingforeternity.org. It should be in the show notes as well. And so if you want to join us for Philadelphia to evangelize, we have 2 different evangelism teams right now that are coming together. We might be having a third. We're going to try to go out there on the 30th and have a really good event where we're just going to go out and evangelize. We're not doing a conference like we've done in the past. We're just going to have a day to evangelize. I'm hoping that this becomes something we're going to try to do monthly, just to get a lot of people out monthly evangelizing down in Philadelphia. And then hopefully that encourages you to evangelize in your local neighborhood. Why? Because we want to create events for people, encourage people to start evangelizing. Also, let you know that I will be out with Brother Justin Peters in Keller, Texas. He called me up, asked if I'd come help him out. So I will be at First Baptist Church Keller in Keller, Texas, August 1st to the 5th. Justin will be speaking at the church. He's going to be doing his Clouds Without Water seminar, an adjusted version of it. He will be speaking there on Sunday. I will not be there until Sunday evening because, well, I have my church to preach at. So I get there. I will be there for his seminar Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night at First Baptist Church Keller. If you'd like to meet us there, we will be there. So come check that out. Encourage anyone in that area that is part of Word of Faith. If you know people that is Todd Bentley territory. I mean, this church actually is, from what Justin said, walking distance to where Todd Bentley is. So maybe that'd be fun. Justin runs into Todd Bentley. That would be classic. Could you picture that? There is video of that. There is video of Justin.
There is video of that already.
Very short video, great video. Todd Bentley getting rebuked by Justin Peters in front of his own live audience. And the guy knows so little scripture that he didn't even realize Justin was quoting scripture. Yeah. Crazy. Just search Justin Peters, Todd Bentley. You'll probably find it. That'd be great if they just happen to run into each other like at the grocery store. So that would be classic. So I'll just have to make sure my camera's like always on or something. Also, the following week, I'm headed out to the Creation Museum, July 8th to the 12th. Probably we'll be there at the museum. The plan is that we'll be at the Creation Museum, August 9th. Yeah, I said July. I meant August. So in case I said wrong, August 2nd to the 4th, I'll be with Justin at Keller, Texas. August 9th to the 11th, the 9th and 10th, we plan on going to the Creation Museum. On the 11th, we plan to go to the Ark Encounter. If you'd like to join us, the plan that we're trying to work on is either Dr. Silvestro or myself will be doing a guided tour for folks. We may have some other people's names you might recognize that might be helping and doing a tour through those facilities, explaining some of what we see there, things like that. If you want to be part of that, contact us, info@strivingforeternity.org, info@strivingforeternity.org. The main purpose of this is really my church that is going out there. So we're going out as a church, but I want to open it up to any that want to join us and be able to glean from the advantage of not only going out to the museum, but also being able to be taught by either myself, Dr. Silvestro, or others that may be joining us. So if you want to join Grace and Truth Bible Church you're welcome to join us. That is the first time I've announced the name of the church. That's, we've planted a church in Pennsylvania. The neat thing with it, Bud, is, the reason for our name is real simple. There's a lot of churches that we've discovered that we've attended that either have grace or they have truth. We haven't found any that seem to have grace and truth with the Bible. So we're Grace and Truth Bible Church. And you're going to say, well, where's the website? Well, we haven't put it up yet. We're still working on it. So if you're in the Pennsylvania area and you're like, I want to get involved with a church at the ground floor, you can join us. There's going to be more news that I'm going to mention of affiliations who are, and things like that, who we're working with to plant the church. But, there'll be a lot more information I'm going to give out in the future about that. But if you happen to be in the area and you want to get in the ground floor, contact us again, info@strivingforeternity.org. That'll be a place for now to contact us. And so those are some events coming up that we have. After that, G3 is on the schedule. That's out September 29th to October 2nd. So we'll be out to G3. To update on the Israel trip, our Israel trip was not canceled. It was postponed. What Justin and I agreed to do is, because our trip was basically canceled for October, we have decided to change. Jim Osman had a church trip planned through the same guy that we used. He used the same person that we're using. And so that person, Eric, had 2 trips planned. One is with Jim Osmond. One is with Matt Slick from carm.org. So what we decided, since Justin used to attend Jim's church, it made sense for Justin to go on that. We took the people that were with us. Half the people went onto that trip. I believe that trip is full. So that trip was scheduled for February. That will continue if they drop the vaccine requirement, I think, by November. Our trip is going to be in March. And I think you can go to carmisrael.org or .com, I forget which. You go to the CARM website. It'll be on there, I'm sure. You just mentioned to Eric that you heard it from Striving for Eternity. But since Matt Slick and I are very good friends, we decided I would go on the March trip. We took the other half of the people and went to there. There is still room on that one. I believe there is about 5 to 10 slots open. So, Bud, there is room for you. Just saying, no pressure to put you on the spot. But, Bud, we need a wise man out there. Just saying. There is one thing with the trip that we're doing with Matt that is kind of neat. The trip that Justin and Jim are going on doesn't have the better guide. We have Andre, the guide that Eric really likes, which is what we had for our trip. But we got something else that we didn't have originally scheduled for March. And that is, we're going to have an archaeologist who lives in Israel that will be with us. He's done a lot of the work there, does a lot of work with Eric, and has written books on Israel and the archaeology there. That becomes a real treat because we're going to have an expert walking us through who decided to move there so that he can do his expertise there. So that is going to be a neat thing. That's going to be an extra that we didn't plan on. So I encourage you to do that. If you ever wanted to go to Israel, now's the time, because Eric told us that if we canceled and Justin and I didn't split up, if we tried to do what we originally wanted to do, if we held it off to 2023 and rebook a brand new trip, it would have been $6,000 minimum. They think it'll be $6,500 to book a brand new trip the way we had it. So this is the last time we can get trips at these prices. Because of COVID, everything is going up over there. So I really encourage you to go check that out. It's going to be on the CARM website. It should also be on Striving for Eternity. I believe actually Josh did make an update there. So it should be up on strivingforeternity.org and one of the banners there. I could see Bud is already on his way. He's quickly typing away to see if it's there. So is it there?
No, I got a text message. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, it is there.
It's there.
I looked. So yeah, you could go there, and all the details will be there. It's on the banner up there at the top. It's Striving for Eternity. So go check that out and get the details there. So a little bit of updates there, a little bit of a long show. We wanted to give the details. Bud, any other things you think that we missed?
Oh, there's always a lot that we miss, but we have other shows. So,
That's right. Next week.
But yeah, I would just, on the issue, I'd reiterate, I was thinking about hope and change. Look, our hope is Christ. We have to proclaim him. And the change that we're looking for is the power of God in the gospel. That's our hope. Our call, deny yourself, take up your cross, follow me. This is the call of Christian. It's about Christ. It's not about us. And he's left us here to share that truth and that grace.
There we go. Next week, we plan, or at least I plan, to address some theological issues. We're going to try and tackle some passages that people take out of context. There's a lot of them, so we're going to try to choose which ones we're going to deal with. I want to we've dealt with some political things for a while. I want to get to some biblical things, help encourage you in that way. If you have topics you want us to discuss, we need to hear from you. We really want to hear what you think. If you want to come evangelize with us, email us, info@strivingforeternity.org. If you like the idea of us moving our drop date of this podcast, or you don't like it, let us know, info@strivingforeternity.org. If you have some content you want us to talk about, you have some ideas for shows, info@strivingforeternity.org. Let us know. If you want to write a review, there's a link on how to write a review for this podcast. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. Bud and I get to see each other. We don't get to see you, and it's all about you. This is for you. And I don't mention this often, but I'll say, if you find value out of this show, maybe you'd consider going to Striving Fraternity/support. Go to strivingfraternity.org/support and support us. We're in desperate need. COVID was not good for us. We took a big hit, lost 60% of our donations. And so if you could help us out, it would be a great help. So we would greatly appreciate it if you could help us. So consider going to Striving Fraternity there and support us. With that, you know what, Bud?
What's that?
That's a wrap.
This podcast is part of the Striving for Eternity ministry. For more content or to request a speaker or seminar to your church, go to strivingforeternity.org.